Hi there, and welcome to the Curious Collective podcast, conversations designed for the conscious community to bring awareness to those holistic practices that help us live our best life. So tap into the wisdom and knowledge of our guests to heal, transform, and live as your true soulful self. Now, listeners, today I am so absolutely honored to have with us the beautiful Segal, who is a healer, international speaker, author, wisdom educator, and all things. Actually fangirling a little, and was very transparent before she came on to say, I'm actually feeling very nervous. So taking some deep breaths. Welcome, Ina, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Katie. It's a pleasure to explore this with you. I think I was saying to someone before, if I could just do this every day, I'd be happy.
Absolutely. How fun would it be? Let's make that happen somehow. So please introduce to us what it is that makes your heart sing.
It's interesting because somebody asked me that yesterday, and it's really seeing people transform. It's really seeing people go from a place of pain or stuckness or in disease or ailments that they feel are ruling their lives, and then transform, and in that transformation really discover who they are, and then go on a journey that is not just, let's heal this pain, but let's go on a journey of discovering who I really am, as a soul and the spirit. What am I doing here? What is this all about? That's what really
discovery, and getting so curious that you never stop that voyage of self-discovery. You just keep removing and diving deeper into those layers.
Absolutely.
And the work that you do, can you please explain to us a little bit, the listeners that may not even know who you are yet, what it is that you do in this world?
I do a lot of things in terms of healing work. I guess I give people an opportunity to, one, discover the language of their body and their soul, essentially, because it's both, and then to figure out what is the wisdom within you and how do we use that wisdom to heal, transform, grow, understand who we are, and really be in the experience of life that we desire. But it's not so much about, it's not a rah-rah experience, and it's not a band-aid. It's really a step-by-step understanding of who you are, and really awakening your intuitive capacity in I need to say, in a safe way, because there are unsafe ways of doing it, and working with your, I guess, with your whole being in a way that looks at your experiences, your emotions, your thoughts, but rather than all of them being quite disconnected, what I try and do is bring it all together and show people the bigger picture of what is possible, how beautifully layered you are, how much there is to understand, and the fact that it's exciting to understand the depth of a human soul.
Absolutely. And I love how you did describe it, how it's all sort of seems separate and so distant, but really it's this beautiful oneness that you can explore, in a package. I guess you've done beautifully to tie it all together. And I often refer to your work when I'm working with my clients. And can you talk into a little bit those that perhaps have moved through life not really acknowledging that sort of emotional side of them, or have skipped past that, and the energy within their body sort of manifested into physical pain? How can it help someone to bring that together and to dive into that and to discover that?
And it's really interesting because I'm actually thinking of one of my students, and there's so many ways to dive in and discover. It just depends from what direction you want to come. And and this is actually a very important thing, because what I find essentially is that most people, let's say they have a physical issue or a stagnation or pain or whatever, or emotional pain, or stuckness, and they really want to start from where they are at now. So they want to heal something from where they're at now. And it's quite interesting because this is a really difficult, long way of doing it. But to actually start to discover, hold on a second, whatever I've got going on didn't start now. It's been a journey. I had to get here. I didn't just get stuck. I got here, through lots of pushing away and resisting and all sorts of experiences. And now, where is an area where can I start? And it just reminds me of this lady that I used to teach in Europe a lot, and I absolutely love Europe. And this was in Paris in particular. And she, I'm actually going to share two stories from there that demonstrate this. So she actually wouldn't come to the workshop, but I used to teach in so there would be a bookshop upstairs and this incredible space downstairs for healing. So I'd come in through the bookshop, and she would, kind of look at me, not really say hello, and I got a feeling that she had a lot of emotional stuckness, but she was very skeptical. And she was, to me at that time, I thought she was judging. So because she spent so much time in this particular shop, I literally saw her, and I would come every few months to Paris. I would see her regularly over 2 years and just have this really uncomfortable feeling. And then one day she showed up in the workshop instead of the bookshop. And I said to her, "Oh my God, wow, it's amazing to see you there. I'm just curious why after 2 years you decided to come." And she said, "Look, I've been watching you for the last 2 years, and I've been watching the people that come." And she said, when they come, it looks like they're really, they're drab, they're unhappy. And she said, when they come out, it looks like they've had a facelift. And I'm here for my facelift.
Love that.
And what was really interesting was that, because there was quite a few people in the group, I didn't actually know what her physical issue was. And it turned out that her physical issue was she had a challenge in her ankle and she needed surgery. And she decided that before she committed to surgery, she's going to come and do the workshop. And so during the workshop, I didn't know about this, but I noticed how she was always putting herself down and never taking, there was no self-love, there was no self-connection, and there was always a lot of self-hate. And so I said to her at one point, we're going to do this healing on you as a group, actually, and we're going to send healing, and we're going to send a color into your heart, because I really feel that all your issues come from your heart. So anyway, we did that, and then she was quite moved, and it was like something in her really opened up. But then a few weeks later, I get a phone call from the lady who'd organized the workshop, and she said, "Have you heard about the miracle?" And I was like, "No, what's the miracle?" And she goes, "Oh, the lady that came, the one that kind of was giving you the look for the last 2 years." I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "She had a miracle healing in more ways than one." And she said, firstly, what happened is that after you send her this healing into her heart, she said she was working, and in the processes in this workshop, we're working with something called cord clearing, and she was doing with her father that she hadn't spoken to for 20 years. And the day after she did that process and that clearing, and we also sent her love into her heart, her father called her,
Oh,
first time in 20 years, and he said, I'm so sorry. So he actually apologized, acknowledged what he'd done, and sent, and they reconnected. And she said, and her ankle just healed spontaneously, and so she
wow.
doesn't need to have surgery. So, it was so profound.
Mm.
And then there was a story of this man, and he was a real nightmare, I have to say. So he was coming. So at that time, it was a 6-day workshop that I was teaching. And for the first 3 days, I teach you how to tune in, how to look at your body, how to work with it. And he would put up his hand after every process, and he would say, I don't see anything, I don't feel anything, nothing's happening. So he did that for 3 days, and I was getting frustrated,
Yeah.
because it was influencing other people. And I was like, oh my God. So on day 4, I was like, okay, I'm going to, like, we're going to work with you. So he actually apparently wasn't going to come back on day 4, but he'd forgotten something. So he came back.
Oh,
It's how interesting how that intelligence, the universe
yeah.
works. So he came, and he, so, I said, okay, the first process we're doing is we're actually going to look into each other's eyes. And what you have to do is you have to see beyond what's obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the person's showing you, I want you to go deeper. And so he was working with this lady, and I was like, I'm going to do it on him, myself as well.
Mm.
And so, again, we finished the process, and he's kind of like, oh, and I said to him, you know what? Look, today's your lucky day. You need to come into the middle. And I said to him, you know what? I've tuned into you, and what I see is these bricks, like a brick wall. And behind this brick wall is a little boy. And I have a question for you, and it's a very specific question. And I already know the answer, so you can't, play games or lie to me, or, make it funny. So you've got to answer the question.
Truthfully.
And I said to him, so who's hurt you so much in your life that you feel that you've got to create this brick wall in front of everyone and be hurtful, both to yourself and to others? And he just sat there, and it was like his face cracked. And he said, my mother. And I said to him, well, okay, so we're going to have an experience right now where, I'm going to pretend to be your mother, and I'm going to share with you from a different perspective, and we're going to work in this way. You're going to answer me. Anyway, we did this and this process, and his heart was opening and opening. And then I said to him, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask every person in this room to come up to you and to look deep into your eyes and to tell you what is beautiful about you. And, and he was like, oh, okay, well, anyway, so as this was happening, he was shaking, and I said, how do you feel? He's like, am I allowed to say? How do you, okay. And he goes, I feel orgasmic. He goes, anyway, so after we did this process, we were doing something else, and it was actually working with the heart, with each other, and it was an energetic process of literally, each person tuning in and kind of helping to heal somebody else's heart. And we finished the process, and he puts up his hand, and I'm like, oh my God, no. And he goes, no, this is good. And he said, I've tuned into this person, and I actually saw everything that has happened in her life, in this life, that has created trauma, but I also saw what happened in her previous life, and she knew about it. And he's like, I am amazed. And it was amazing. He was like, you've changed my life. The next day, the whole room was full of flowers that he brought. Was the first one there. And he said to me, I just want to tell you something that I heard you on a radio show, and I wasn't listening to the radio. He said, I was sitting next to the radio and the radio turned on by itself, and you were on the radio show. And he said, I was going to take my life. And then when I heard you, I went, this is my last chance. If this doesn't work, nothing will. And he said, thank you. You know, this experience has saved my life and has given me faith again. So it's so profound, again, in which way we start. But the heart is one of the big, I guess, when people don't know where to start their healing journey, they need to start with their heart. And in one way, it's obvious. In another way, it's like, if your heart is open, you can actually receive healing energy. But beyond that, no one whose heart is shut down can actually be intuitive. Right? It's like maybe they'll get intuitive messages, but they'll be confused and all over the place. So to get true intuitive messages, you really need an open heart. And so this is such a healing.
Absolutely. I thank you for both of those amazing stories. Both of them I felt through my whole body. And especially when you said he was listening to the radio and he felt that, like, I'm glad he listened to the intuitive pull then, because it was probably screaming right at him. And thank you, universe, for doing that for that beautiful man. And what amazing stories. I can speak personally to the heart thing. I have been in the military for 22 years, and you kind of get conditioned and taught just to shut that sort of part of you down, because you don't feel. If you feel, you're seen to be as a weak, or, you know, all sorts of other associations that are put to it. So over the last 6 years on my own personal journey, it has been a long one, because I just didn't know where to start. And it is quite overwhelming for someone that perhaps joined a job, doesn't necessarily have to be military, at the age of 17 and was conditioned in a certain way, and then sort of realizes and pops out into the real world of, oh, I know that this is calling me, but I just don't know where to start. So for you to say that the heart's the best place, like a great place to start, is like, okay, cool. Tell us more.
Well, it is. And it's so interesting when we actually look at the heart from the perspective of, you know, you can see the chakras in the back of the heart chakra and what lives there. And I'm a really, really big believer in working with archetypes, because to be honest, I found it to be the most effective, the most safest, the most interesting, expansive way to work with your feelings, where you grow in. And again, I'm not a fan of saying fast, easy, and quick and simple when it comes to healing, because it certainly isn't most of the time. But if we compare it to everything else, you know, it's a way that doesn't skip steps. So it's a lot faster and a lot easier, and it shows you where you're at.
Yeah, I love that. And
so it's quite interesting when we're looking at the heart, and I talk about this a lot in my free masterclass, that there's a saboteur that lives in the heart as an archetype, but the saboteur is also when it's in the shadow, but in the light, it's your protector, it's your guide, it's your wisdom. And depending on what's happened in our life, we're either shut down, we go, you know what, it hurts too much.
Yeah.
I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to be in this painful scenario. So I'm going to shut it down, you know, and to really keep it open takes a lot of work, because there's pain inside the heart. And to use the experiences of trauma and pain as something that eventually brings wisdom into your life is really profound. You know, and so when we start to explore the heart, you know, there's so many ways, you know, from physical exploration of processes to the chakra kind of exploration processes, to archetypal, there, you know, to emotional. There's which is connected to archetype. There are so many ways of deeply working with it and allowing the heart to grow and to expand. So, but from there, all the healing comes from a warm heart.
Yeah. Are you able to tell us a little bit more? Like, I haven't done any archetypal work, and this fascinates me deeply. Is what got you into that work, and what made you curious at the start to explore, and then now go on to teach that?
I started working with archetypes very, very early on in my journey of healing, because I felt like when you only work with an emotion, like let's say I'm working with anger,
Mhm.
or sadness, and I have a lot of it, there is no, it's they're so big that there's no end to an emotion, and there's no beginning, and it's like, and it's really hard to gather where you're at in that healing journey. But when I looked at archetypal work, I realized that, for instance, that not every, that many of our experiences in life were connected to archetypes. And so, for instance, when I was looking at, where did my own back pain come from? Like, where did it start? I was talking about, a start of something early on. And so I spent years treating it, from the perspective of, I have pain now. And it didn't work for me. I know for some people it does, but for me it didn't work. It was too deep. But when I realized that it came from my childhood, I was like, oh, so how do I work properly with this inner child archetype? And what are the beliefs there? What are the feelings? What are the thoughts? What are the points of view on life? And which part of this inner child is stuck and not growing? And what I found was that by connecting to an aspect, it's not the whole of the inner child experience, right? But an aspect of the child that, for me, felt rejected, that felt alone, felt unsupported. And when I felt like I could see her, I could feel her, I could sense her, I could meet her, and I could essentially reparent her, she could then grow. And in that growing, it wasn't just one feeling that I was working on in terms of shifting. There were many, and there were many kind of points of view and life experiences, and how I felt was different. And I also found that after trying so many different things, my back shifted within the experience of actually connecting and seeing that that's where it was coming from. And I was like, well, wow, I want to know more about this. And then I realized, for example, we have the left and the right sides of the body, and each side is actually connected to an archetype within us. And so what I found, that for if a person's feminine archetype has been shut down, their intuition is shut down, their nurturing is shut down, their ability to love is shut down, their sexuality is shut down. So it's not a one experience, it's like a whole big thing that we start to work with and transform. Their ability to have joy is shut down. Whereas, again, if their masculine is shut down, and they often have issues with the left side and their mother and so on, and their daughter, or their, whoever, feminine people. And then we have the masculine, and that side, when it's shut down, makes us feel like, I'm so frustrated, I want to achieve, but I just can't. I don't know how. I feel weak. I am too afraid. I don't know how to make money. I don't know how to create things in my life. I don't know how to create what I want and what I desire. So
Confidence in life.
yeah, and to actually make things happen, physically happen, or make them appear. And so when, and then there's again lots of issues with the male species, or that masculine energy. So when I found that people could work with those, they didn't just work on, now they would work on their ancestry. Well, what did I pick up from my parents and grandparents that I'm holding in my feminine? And what did I pick up from, my father, my uncle, whoever? And how does that affect me? And which parts of my body does this affect? And I've seen people come in, again, lots of stories today.
I love your stories. Share.
Yeah, I've seen, like, literally there was a girl that was brought into my workshop. She couldn't even, walk in. She couldn't even walk in on using the support. So she so someone, two people carried her in, and I remember, I think again it was maybe on a day 3 or day 4, I see, like her stuff around, but I don't see her. And I'm like, where is she? How did she move around? And then I see her walking from, the bathroom. Hello. And and I was like, oh my God, you can walk. And
That's fantastic. So what had happened? What penny had dropped for her?
Again, this was a very strongly ancestral experience that she connected to, that allowed her I feel like, just trying to remember it because it was a while ago, it was very connected to her grandparents and the war, and how much she absorbed of around their pain and trauma that hadn't been transformed. And it affected her whole reproductive system, and it affected her ability to walk, move forward, because it was like they were stuck, she was stuck. I'm pretty sure she was Jewish, so she felt like she was carrying that whole trauma on her back and in her legs. And there was a process of where she connected to it and let it go. And it was profound. Yeah.
So do you feel that she took away just so much from that experience? I know that even when I've explored this sort of ancestral stuff with some of my clients, it's been mind-blowing for them, because they haven't really ever thought of that as something that's in their current 3D reality, is this sort of ancestral patterning.
Absolutely. And again, she had no idea that this is why she wasn't able to walk, and this is why she had cysts and, and big issues around her whole reproductive system. And it was profound. I feel like I'm just remembering the first workshop she did with me was when she started walking. It was really the second workshop that she did where she was able to connect into the reproductive system and see what was going on and transform that. So it was very inspiring and humbling. And it's like, wow, if we could just work with this wisdom more, if we could just, connect to it instead of resisting it so much.
Imagine teaching this in the schools. I'm like, that would be just invaluable. Ditch all the other work and just teach this stuff.
It'd be amazing.
Oh, so good. I know I use this wonderful book of yours probably nearly every single day, and it's called The Secret Language of the Body. And I know that you obviously wrote this from such an embodied place. I would love you to talk into perhaps, a little bit of your journey and before writing this, and then the process of writing it. Like, where did you seek all this amazing wisdom from? Because it's just always seems to be like spot on.
It was really interesting, I guess, coming back to my own story of healing. I spent years, as I've mentioned, being in pain, and especially with my back pain, I had digestive issues, I had psoriasis all over my skin, anxiety, and I felt extremely, extremely disempowered, and I felt like I was going round and round in circles, and I would show up in people's offices, I had that attitude that I was taught from a very young age in terms of the doctor's right, the practitioner's right, and they know everything and I don't know anything, and their way is the way to do it, and you just kind of show up and let them do what they do. And I found that for me personally, that didn't work. So I just feel like I'd have progress, I'd go backwards, and it'd just be this cycle that was constant. And I got to a place which I feel like, we get to this turning point in our lives where I had been seeing a chiropractor for about a year, and I literally couldn't move. My back was twisted and inflamed. I was in agony, and I went to his office, and he came out into the waiting room, and basically he said to me, I see that your body's stuck. And I was like, yeah, I know that part. What are you going to do to help me? And he just stood there, and for a moment there was silence. And then he said, nothing. And I said, what do you mean nothing? And he said, go home. There's nothing I can do. Your body wants to be stuck. Yeah, those were his words. Your body wants to be stuck. So on the way home, I was enraged, But in that rage, the things he was saying were connecting, and I felt like I made a decision with my thinking, feeling, and will, like all of me, to heal myself. I didn't really know how to do that, mind you, but I was like, you know what, when you really aligned and that's what you desire, then things happen. And so I had been doing a lot of acting classes, and we learn about meditation and connection and breath work in those classes at the time. So I started by actually just breathing with the pain instead of against the pain. And as I was doing that, of course, my mind was chattering and coming up with all sorts of skeptical things. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to have to count backwards from 30 just to shut the mind up. And as I was doing that, I remember just this thought came to me, and it was like, if there is something divine out there, and look, I'm not sure, I'm not convinced. I want help, and I want it now. And when I said that with the intention and the intensity that I said it, there was this golden warmth that just went through my whole body, and I went, oh my God, something's happening, something's happening. And at that point, a thought came into my head. I wonder what my back looks like. And immediately, it was literally like a light switch went on, and I could see my back. I could see the twistedness, the inflammation, everything. It was a little bit scary.
Yeah.
And then I started exploring, and it was probably the first time in my life where I was really exploring, not from a place of a victim of how is this happening to me, I'm so young, but from a place of curiosity, and I really want to know this. I really want to understand it. And so as I was exploring it, I started seeing images and pictures, and the pictures, were of my childhood, as I mentioned, and the inner child, and the rejection that I felt coming to Australia, and not being able to speak the language. And once I really felt through the information and connected with it, the image changed, and the story changed, and the experience changed, because I was like, what else? And the next thing that showed up was my parents. So they had a lot of conflict in their marriage, and so the deepest feeling was like, I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe here. And so again, I was like, oh, that's connecting to my digestive issues and my skin, because, protection.
Chakra stuff.
Yeah. And then again, I saw an image of my grandparents, and their trauma that hadn't been processed at all. And they had a horrific trauma. My grandmother was part of a family of 8, and her mother was psychic, and she told her, you're the only one who's going to survive out of all the children, you're the lucky one. And essentially that's what happened. But even when the war started, for my grandmother to even have a chance to survive, her mother was killed helping her. She was 13. So there was just so much trauma and horrific experiences that had, again, not been assimilated, processed, understood, nothing, just frozen. And and I kind of went, wow, this is something I'm going to come back to. It's not mine, but it's connected to me, and I just want to acknowledge it. And the last thing that came to me on that particular day was that I had this tendency to absorb energy from other people, and I didn't know how not to do it. I didn't know I was doing it. I just knew that people would feel better when they were around me. In terms of physical issues, but I would feel worse the next day after spending time with somebody who was ill. So I knew I had to learn. So in all of that, it was like this massive awakening. And then I felt like I fell asleep, and I had the best sleep ever, and the next day when I woke up, it was like my 70% of the pain was gone, and I knew that I was different. And so then from that moment, I started exploring. I actually didn't leave the bed for a while, and I, for a few weeks, because I was so scared that it would come back. I'm like, just keep going. I don't know what I'm doing. Keep connecting. Something's working. And then 2 things happened that eventually led to me being able to work with people and write. Was that the first thing that occurred was I was studying to be a writer, so that was something I wanted to do. And my ex-partner's friend came to visit us, and she was a really, really good writer, an amazing writer, and she was helping me. So we're sitting next to the computer, just chatting, typing, and all of a sudden, as I'm looking at her, I saw this image of a cartoon-looking liver, and it appeared above her head, and I was doing like all this stuff with my eyes, and she's like, do you have something in your eye? And I was like, can I ask you a really strange question? And she said, yeah, sure. And to me, it was really difficult because I had wanted to be an actress, and I had wanted to be a writer. So anything to do with science, with the body, literally had no interest for me at school. I didn't even know what the liver did. I paid zero attention in science class. I was like, oh my God. And she said, oh yeah. So I said to her, look, do you have liver problems? And she said, oh my God, how do you know? I've had them my whole life. And again, it was so interesting. The image changed, and I saw a man, and I had a feeling it was her grandfather. And I said, did your grandfather have the same issues? And she said, yes, he did actually. And I said to her, again, the image changed, and I was like, was he in a concentration camp? And she said, yeah. And I said to her, do you get nightmares? And she said, yeah. And then this thing came out of my head, and I was like, oh my God, I really hate not knowing what I'm saying. And I said to her, look, I just feel like your issues in your DNA. It's coming from your DNA. And then I told her all this really, really personal stuff about her family. And she actually didn't know half of it. She called her mom, and she's like, Ina's just told me this stuff. Is any of it true?
Oh my God.
And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I'm so freaked out. Just like, I just feel so uncomfortable, and I'm so freaked out.
I love that you trusted it, though. I love that you didn't hold it in, and that you did still share it. That's amazing.
Well, I did learn later on to not always share it. But she then said to me, look, in my 25 years on earth, I've learned more about my family and what, what's going on with me in the last half an hour than I've done, since I was born. And 2 years later, she actually had tests on it, and they said, oh, this is in your DNA, this issue that she was having. And so I was like, oh my God, something really weird happened, because I didn't know any of this stuff. And then my mum called me again, probably the same week, I would say, because it all happened at a similar time. And she was very excited about my healing and my healing journey, because she had been the one trying to cross the road with me when I couldn't walk at times, and the pain could start in the middle of the road and she'd have to drag me, back. And it was really, yeah. And so she goes, oh, I was just wondering if you could do some healing on your dad. And I'm like, healing? Like what? I don't even know how to do that. And she goes, yeah, but you did it on yourself. And I'm like, okay, what's the problem? I don't know how to do it, so I'm not promising anything. But what's the problem? And she said, well, he hurt his leg really badly at work, and he's having a lot of trouble walking, like his knee. So could you do something? And I was like, probably not, but I'll try. And so I'm focusing on my dad's leg, and especially the knee. And I keep getting this image of a boat. And I call her back and I'm like, just out of curiosity, you said he hurt his leg at work. Was it at work or was it on a boat? And she goes, well, it was definitely at work. And I'm like, right, okay, thank you. Anyway, then 5 minutes later, my dad calls me and he's like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm trying to do this healing that I don't know how to do on your leg, but I keep getting boats. So for my own sanity, I need to know, did you hurt it on a boat or at work? And he was like, heard it on a boat, but I don't want you to tell your mom this. And I was like, well, you shouldn't lie, should you? But yeah, it was really profound. And I was like, okay, something's really going on here. And yeah, I started practicing on my family, and learning and getting more and more, I guess, understanding. And then I got to a point where, I had a lot of clients. And again, I started very early, very young. And I felt like I was getting frustrated, because I felt like the books that were around that kind of gave you some insight were very superficial. And would give you one line and an affirmation to do. And I was like, well, I'm sorry, I said this affirmation a million times, nothing happened. In fact, it's making me angry, because nothing's happening. So I was like, this is not, this is frustrating me. And then at the same time, I was like, I felt like people coming to see me once a week or once every 3 weeks or 2 weeks was never enough. Like
they needed more, something
more. They needed to participate. They needed to allow their own selves to be part of the process and part of the journey, not just rely on me. I could guide you, I could help you, I could clear some space for you, but you got to do the healing, you've got to choose to, you've got to kind of connect to it. And I was feeling like things were taking a lot longer because people were not doing any homework. And when I'd give them homework, they'd often come back and I'd be like, well, did you do the homework? And I said, and you can't lie because I can see it. They were like, well, I lost a piece of paper. And I was like, you know what? I need to write a book. I need to write a book that people can't just lose, as a piece of paper. And I was like, and I want to write it in the way that it would work for me personally, in the way that I'd want to read it, And so I was like, I need it to be clear, and I need it to have sections. So like, I need a section on all the body parts and understanding them. I need a section on diseases. That was the least fun part of it. I need a section on color and on emotions and on the systems of the body, because I want a holistic point of view. And then I need to connect a lot of pieces together and give people an understanding of how to work with different parts of the body, because if I have a disease somewhere, it's going to be somewhere in the body. So if I can combine and connect pieces, then I can have a really profound healing experience.
What a monumental project you set yourself.
He was. And I think back at it and I was like, I was doing healing sessions all the time. I was teaching. I had really, really young children, and I wrote the book in a year, and then everything else has taken.
Wow.
I mean, like, mainly
That
because
year would be a complete blur.
I was just like, how did I write that one so quickly?
Yeah.
But to be fair, I already had a lot of the information when I started, and a lot of it was, majority of the information was really from seeing clients and tuning into them and going, I'm seeing links and writing notes, I'm seeing connections. And then it was breaking the body down in a sense of, well, what does the knee do? What's it for? What kind of, what
Function.
stored? Yeah, what's the function? What will be stored in the left knee? What will be stored in the right knee? How does this life experience essentially relate to the breakdown of the body or the rebuilding of the body? Because one of the things I heard that really influenced me at the time was also, I was listening to this lady called Candace Pert, who was a famous author and a scientist, and she was talking about an experiment. And she said, so there was an experiment where essentially people, the scientific community was working with people with multiple personality disorders. And what they found, and she was giving an example of, let's say, Jane, that Jane could, in personality A, she could have diabetes and pretty serious and have to have injections. But when Jane moved into personality B, she didn't have diabetes at all.
Wow.
And, but she might have a skin condition, a rash that appeared in her body. And she said, but if let's say she had 3 personalities, in personality C, she didn't have a rash and she didn't have the diabetes, but her eye color changed.
Oh my gosh.
And, and Candace was saying, so what does this mean? It means that the body itself is embodied by the soul. It's embodied by a soul that has, belief systems, emotions, perspectives. And if you want to change things, then essentially there's got to be an aspect of the soul and the personality that changes, that transforms.
That is profound.
And so when I heard that at the time, it would have been, I don't know, 23 or something, I was like, wow, okay, well, this makes sense now. Now I can write about this and explore it, and how, these different aspects of your personality, which make up the soul, actually eventually lead to certain weakening in the physical body and breakdowns.
Oh, absolutely fascinating. I know personally for myself and any clients that when we've gone into your beautiful book and explored, say, the knee, and I read out, like, there's a list for those that haven't seen the book of things that might be associated with that area. Not all of them resonate, but generally there's quite a few that do. And I say to people, like, just take out what really sits with you and just explore the rest and get really curious. Is that sort of what was intended when you wrote those particular sections?
I really felt like the idea was to guide people towards, what resonates, and what resonates at that time. What are they ready to look at? And sometimes people want to start with the hardest thing, when they want to do healing, like, just let's go to the, the bottom of it. And it's like, see, I don't know that that's the best way. I feel like often you need confidence. you really need confidence before you can tackle something deeper, and you need strength, and that
And to feel safe.
yeah, exactly. Safety is such a big thing. So we feel safe when we have more confidence as well, and so I often say to people, don't start with the hardest thing. Start with something that's easier, where you can see results and build confidence, and then you can go into much more challenging part of your body or exploring.
And then your curiosity may have led you down paths that have given you more tools to sort of cope with what's coming up for you. That little toolkit of, like, say the breath work or the yoga or the, meditation or anything like that. Whereas if you're just starting with a clean slate, you'd go into probably a state of overwhelm.
Absolutely. I think we're constantly in that building and letting go. And so maybe yoga was amazing at one time, but not anymore, and so now you're like, where am I at? What do I do now? Or a particular technique was, really, really worked 3 years ago, but now you're like, oh, it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because you've grown and you need something else. You need a different perspective, a different way of connecting.
Yeah, I love that. And before we talk about your other books and your other work, I just wanted to ask, that chiropractor that sent you away that day, did you ever go back and sort of thank him?
Oh, absolutely. I went to see him 6 months later, I think, and I remember he said, I don't know what you've done. I don't care what you've done. He was like, whatever you've done, keep doing it.
Oh, I love that so much. I love that, generally there is that turning point for someone, and, having that deeper awareness of self will just show you where it is. And that trust you had in yourself to stay there and just to sit with it and just to explore it, that, has gifted all of us, the whole world, with the work that you've got now. So I honor that. So this book is obviously one of yours. What other beautiful creations do you have out there in the world?
I have a book called The Secret Life of Wellness, but it's actually you have to buy it from the US, I think. And I have lots of card decks. I have color cards. They're actually in the background.
Oh, yeah.
The Secret Language of Your Soul cards, which are actually a companion to the secret language of your body. And they're, again, looking at the body from another perspective, from, I guess, that soulful of, if these are the challenges that you're having, then be conscious that they will be impacting these particular parts of the body.
Ooh.
So it's a very healing card deck. It's not so much about, what's going to happen to me in the future, but more like, how do I connect and heal different parts of my body? And then I have a card deck called Mystical Healing Cards, and those ones are really about exploring more of your spiritual state and who you are, and they're deeper than I guess they go deeper into that type of exploration as opposed to, let's say, the body. Although I have to say that the Secret Language of Your Soul cards, which just came out only recently, they are equivalent of a book. So if you actually it took a lot of work, to probably the same amount of work that it takes into a book to put them together. And I'm very proud of them and where they lead somebody and the insights they give. So they're quite there's a lot to it. And then the ones that I've got Heal Yourself reading cards, and they're more archetypal.
Oh, nice.
Giving you both an archetypal understanding, but also they're more about like what's going to happen, showing you what's going to happen, in the future.
Guidance.
So yeah, it's exciting. And then I've got a new card deck that'll come out towards the second half of the year this year, and those are about healing your heart and essentially everybody has heartbreak or stuff, we've talked about that challenge their heart. And it's really about bringing back all those pieces from whenever they had been kind of disowned, or from rejection, hurt, shame, to, grief, to adventure, to daring and creativity and so on. So it's quite a different type of card deck, very heart healing based.
Have you enjoyed the creation phase of those?
I did. They kind of started from a really painful place of breaking up with my ex-husband, and really going, so here I am. And it was really interesting because we had both done so much spiritual work when we were together that I felt like I literally couldn't do any of the things that I had done with him because they would open up more pain. So I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go on a completely different journey.
Like a rediscovery phase.
Well, it really was, and I was like, I'm going to have to, figure out something very different to do. And one of the things, when I was in the depth of grief at the time, that I felt that I could do was write love letters to my heart. That's where the idea came from. And every time I wrote it, it was like, oh, I just feel this more calm.
Nurturing.
Yeah, and and so it was really healing in that sense. And so I kind of went, oh, I'm going to
Create this new deck.
work with this. And then eventually, to be honest, once I already healed most of it is when I actually wrote it. Because I was like, does this work?
Yep.
Can this help me? Can it help other people? So when I was in a much better place, much more whole place, then I was like, okay, let's write about all this stuff. And it was really empowering.
Well, I look forward to playing with those. And you have a new book that's just come out?
Coming out still. So again, media. So this book is called Understanding Modern Spirituality.
Oh, awesome.
And it's this one was again so interesting, to kind of to write. And I love how my publisher really made it so pretty inside, and just and this one is really deep. Again, it's I guess it's to take somebody on a journey into understanding who they are as a spiritual being, in this modern age, in this time, with everything that's going on. But a lot of the information that I discovered that has inspired me probably for the last 10 years has come from very old mystery knowledge that had been hidden. And what I found with a lot of the books was that they were very difficult to read and very difficult to understand. And
lots of fluff. Wasn't just to the point.
No, there's no to the point. And the language is quite different, and they're from Europe. And I guess, I found I had so much resistance myself originally looking at that type of knowledge, and even feeling like, am I intelligent enough to really understand this stuff? And it took years. And at one point I was like, you know what, I just want to share some of this. I'm going to share it. I'm going to start by sharing it online, because this wisdom that I've learned is so, so different to anything in the new age sphere that I'd ever come across. And when I started sharing, I was expecting for people not to like it, because when I first started looking into this deeper kind of very sometimes complex information, I was like, oh my God, I preferred it when I knew the more simple things.
Yeah, yeah.
And and so when I was sharing it, I was expecting people to say, like, this is a bit too hard or complicated. But
they were ready for it.
Yeah, and I was really surprised. And so when and then I had a meeting, so I did that for quite a while. And then I was meeting my publisher, and they said to me, we'd love to have a book by you, but we like the idea, a lot of people don't have, time to read now, but they love opening a book and going, I want to read about this topic or that topic. Could you do something like that? And I was like, well, I actually feel like I've been posting, and it's a little bit uncomfortable because it's touching on the deepest part of my belief systems. But maybe I could write something like that. And they were like, yeah. And then it took about 5 years until it actually got written and done properly. And so, this book kind of looks at things like, life and death and the soul and the spirit and the differences and what are the subtle bodies and
oh yes. Oh, I can't wait to get my hands on it.
yeah, and like what are the and again, one of the things that I don't know if people can feel it even from just a little interview, but I'm not a very fluffy person. I don't like fluffy spirituality.
Me either. That's why I really like your work, because it's just to the point. It's beautiful.
Thank you. And I guess I was born in a country where people don't fluff around. There's no sugarcoating. It's like, this is how
Let's
it
not sugarcoat. Let's just get it out there and do the work and enjoy it and explore it and share it. And
is.
yeah, and again, I guess, even just the things you've touched on in your new book there is like, I know even within the conscious community that I've helped to create, people are asking and exploring those sorts of things for themselves. So to perhaps have them contained in the one space where they can dive deeper into it and have those conscious conversations is going to be really beautiful.
I hope so. And one of the earlier things that took me on a journey was, I guess the exploration of the spiritual beings of their angelic realm. And I know I've upset a few people by saying this before, but essentially everything that was out there that I read just didn't resonate to me and didn't feel real. And it felt like we're using something spiritual as a magic genie to get what we want. And I was like, just not buying it. I'm not resonating with this. It's
There was
too
something more on those deeper layers.
Yeah, I was like, it doesn't feel, I don't feel the truth in this. And it was really, I guess, profound when I went on this journey into these mystery teachings, that what I did find there had so much substance, had so much depth and connection and wisdom, that I was like, oh my God, I finally feel like I found this. And then I've had many, many personal experiences with it. So I guess, part of the book is really a discovery, like you said, a conversation. I don't give all the answers because it's impossible. At one point, my publisher actually said to me, hey, can you please do at the end of the book, to like write about each word that you wrote, that what's it called, an index kind of thing, and explain it. And I was like, no, because that would be 5 books, if you wanted me to explain each concept, that I wrote about, that is that I would want to explore properly, then essentially it wouldn't be, I wouldn't be, it wouldn't fit into this book. And I was like, that's the point of the book, is for people to hear my point of view, my story, my research on it. How did I come to this?
And then explore what that is for them and get curious and go deeper for themselves, like empowering them, I guess, with the wisdom and tools to go further.
Exactly. The one thing I did do that she talked about was that each chapter contains transformational steps.
Oh, yeah.
So that we're not just reading and getting information, but we have an opportunity to go on a journey of exploration. And, also at the end of the book, there are really deep processes, from processes kind of for healing your body to trauma release, to ancestral release, to the
Fantastic.
shadow work, and so on, and how to strengthen yourself. And so yeah, and the book itself has several sections, and where I kind of explore different ideas from the section of kind of what's the bigger picture that we're in, which looks at how can we think in a new way, how can we
Cracking open that mind and expanding our consciousness.
yeah, like how did our education impact us, and is it all just physical really, or is it something different? And and then we kind of enter into an experience of three worlds, that we live in: the spiritual world, the physical world, the emotional worlds, and so on. And so it's a real exploration. And I have I look at the subtle bodies and really what they do and how they help us and how we can prevent from destroying them.
Yeah.
Some of the chapters are very confrontational, like why being comfortable can actually lead to stagnation, even though we want comfort.
I love it.
And we'll look at like angels and archangels and archai, and why they're here, right now, what are they trying to get us to understand and to look at, and why shouldn't we just connect to God? Like, why do we need to understand and connect with these other beings, and what are their roles? So there's some things.
Wow, what a creation.
Yeah, like the past, the future, the moon and the sun forces, and how they impact our lives.
Do you reflect upon the work that you've done within this book and sort of go, oh wow, I did this, like this is amazing? Is it a creation that you're really looking forward to sort of birthing out into the world?
I think yes, and then there's been parts of me that have been a little bit scared at times. I'm not gonna lie, where I was like, yeah, am I ready to get this out? Because I think when I first wrote it, I sent it to some people and they were like, we're a bit speechless. I don't know what to say. Like, this is deep and there's a lot in
Bring
it.
the deep on. I love it.
And they're like, and it's different, like really different. And so I felt like I kind of sent it to my publisher, and I was like, I don't know if I actually want it published. I'm just sending it to you because I want to hear your feedback on it, because you publish all sorts of books and this one's pretty intense. And she was like, no, it's good, like don't worry, it's fine, like yeah, we want to publish it. And so I think I asked her several times, I'm like, sure you really want to do this book? Is this...
I'm so excited. I know I personally think, outsider looking in, reflecting on all you've just said, people are so ready for this next level, and there's so much dilution out there and so much information. It's going to be so beautiful to be able to explore so many different topics within one book, especially from someone that we know, love and trust from previous editions that have come out, that we've actually done a lot of the healing work through using your previous books as a tool. So bring it on. I'm so ready to receive my copy and explore this some more. And I do thank you with deep gratitude for creating something like this.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and thank you for letting me share. But yeah,
Is the book coming out in the middle of the year, did you say?
yeah, it's coming out June. So
Oh
June
yeah.
3, think like the 1st of June or something. So it's could be early on my website. I'm just working on it. Not
Watch
there
this
yet.
space.
You know.
So your details and every way to connect with the work that you do, masterclasses and things like that, will definitely be in the blurb of everywhere that this webinar, podcast, however it is presenting for you, the listeners, is posted. And I would just love to say thank you so very much, Ina, for all that you are and all the wisdom that you've dropped here with us today. And if you've got any parting words for the listeners, please do so.
Well, I just feel like, it's a journey, and when you really step into it, and it does require courage to step into it. But when you do, you'll never be bored, and you'll never really be depressed, and you'll always be in an exploration of what's possible. And this is why each day, no matter how challenging or what comes at you from the outside world, you become a responder to life instead of a reactor. And even if you react, which is okay, it happens.
Reflect.
Yeah, you how soon can you respond? How soon can you shift and go into the response?
I absolutely love that. I love that. There's so much in this podcast. Like, it's so good. And I know myself, I'm going to be going back and listening to it. And we value your time. We value all the beautiful work you've put out into the world. And I look forward to seeing your new creation. Thank you again.
Thank you, Katie.
Bye.